In this episode, we're going to talk about how to identify your audience in a more specific way so you know which niche podcasts to target when you become a guest and get yourself out there in front of those niche podcasts. Who those people are, what they want, what their greatest needs are, and which podcasts you want to go after that fits with this audience. Welcome to the Audacious Mama Show, where we help mom entrepreneurs and side hustlers take control of their time, avoid burnout, so they can become financially liberated. I'm your host, Steph Roberts. Last week, I talked about podcast guesting and how valuable that can be for you to use niche podcasts to get yourself in front of people who are already interested in the things that you're doing. And these are the people you want to be in front of with your products, your services, whatever it is that you have to offer. So when you pitch these podcasts, you need to be very clear about who your audience is, or you're not going to know which of these podcasts is actually the right niche for you. You probably have some idea of who that ideal client is, who they are based on what you've done in the past, or maybe if you just launched your business or service, you're not so clear on it. You're just like, I just sell people dog stuff. And anybody who has a dog is my audience. Maybe it's that simple. But most of us, it's a bit more nuanced, and we're looking for a specific type of person. For example, I'm into cycling. I've been riding my bike on the road for 30 plus years, and I love it. If somebody's selling tandem bikes, would they get on a podcast just for cycling enthusiasts, or would they want to get on a podcast that's more about couples who do outdoor activities together, or even more specific, tandem cycling? The cyclists that I know aren't really that interested in tandem biking. It's a very niche audience. So just because I listen to a cycling podcast, if somebody comes on and talks about tandem cycling, I might not be interested. But if they get on a podcast for tandem bikes, or they get on a podcast specifically about how couples and families can do things together, I think that would be a great fit. Tandem cycling involves two people of any age, so that might be a really good fit. You can go really niche and get very much in front of your audience, or if you have something that's a little more broad, like the example with selling dog toys, maybe those dog toys mean you can go on any and all podcasts related to dogs, dog ownership, maybe even people who run dog walking services, that kind of thing. We're going to jump in a little bit deeper here to ask yourself, okay, who are they? Who is my ideal audience? And you want to ask yourself the basic things about what problems or solutions you're addressing for your audience. Somebody who is a baby or infant sleep specialist. They help families who aren't getting much sleep because their babies aren't sleeping through the night, and they help them with sleep training and things that we just don't know these things. So it helps them get back into a calm schedule. Baby sleeps longer, the family's happier, all that kind of thing. So somebody like that would say that the problems that they're solving are sleep issues for mom and dad, sleep issues for the child. In general, parents of very young children and babies, any podcast where those are the listeners would be your target. When you understand your ideal audience, then you can tailor your pitch, content that you're offering, the podcast that you're going to be on, to that podcast so that their listeners are coming away with high value content, and you're giving them something that's a quick win for them. And defining your audience, we want to know the who. And with the who, are these women? Are they somebody who's interested in something like crafting? Are they moms of twins? Are they empty nesters? Are they spiritually driven? Are they religious? Is there an emphasis in their life on home improvement? So those are some attributes of who these people might be. The next thing you would think about is demographics. You want to know, what is the age roughly of your audience that you're trying to target? What is their income? Where are they in their life phase? Are they retired? Are they people who are early on in their career? Are they brand new moms? Are they super career oriented? So they're hustling. What are their needs and interests? So if they don't have any children, but they've got their fur babies and that's their main focus, that's where they're at in life. Are they side hustlers? Maybe they have a 9 to 5, but they know they're not making ends meet. So they want a side hustle or another stream of income. That's a very specific audience, and there's a way to identify podcasts that specifically address that audience. This is one of those podcasts. Understanding demographics is what's going to help you tailor content to resonate with the specific needs of the podcast that you're pitching. So if you're targeting millennials, but you're on a podcast that's edging toward early retirement, that's a mismatch, and you don't want that to happen. You want to consider the marital status of your audience and address topics related to relationships, if that's what you're talking about, family dynamics, or maybe single life experiences. I'm sure you can imagine how you could mismatch things and end up in the wrong show and have it be a total flop if you're not explicit about what you're going to deliver when you're pitching and knowing very clearly who the audience is of the podcast that you're going after. Topics that I cover and talk about things like caregiving responsibilities or experiences related to trauma or abuse within an audience. I would want to make sure that I put myself on a podcast where it's okay to talk about things that are a little bit heavier, go a little bit deeper, might be a sensitive topic that could be handled with empathy and understanding. I'm thinking of one in mind where they wanted to have me on and the guy was constantly wisecracking and making jokes and playing gags. Like that just did not click with what I was about. So it didn't make any sense to be on that podcast. So here's an example. And if you're listening on the podcast, you can go to the YouTube video and you can see more of these slides. But an example audience profile would be women in transition. And it would be women who are post-relationship, they're in a career change, they're maybe 30 to 50 years old, they're seeking guidance in their mindset, guidance with creating new income sources, a new path to explore so that their lives can unfold in a new direction because they're starting over maybe for a new career, they're starting over after divorce, the end of a marriage, the end of a relationship, or even a death of a spouse or partner. For some people, it's a tight age range. It's 20 to 30. For some of us, it's a much broader range. So you want to say what that is. Women 30 to 50 who are navigating transitions in life, seeking support in various aspects of how to make their life better and thrive. Interested in wellness, hope, and energy. How do they have energy to stay the course for pursuing this new chapter of their lives? You want to focus in on identifying solutions specific to that audience. So you want to understand your target audience's needs, and you can do this through surveys, through your email list. You can send out a quick quiz on social media. There are little surveys or quizzes, or just asking a question and seeing what kinds of answers you get from your specific audience. You could also open up some 5 to 10 or 15 minute phone calls where you just have a really short conversation with somebody in your audience about a specific topic related to what their needs are. What is it you're searching for? What is the biggest problem in your life or obstacle right now? When you identify common pain points, and those pain points align with what you're offering as your expertise or your products or business offers, then you know you're on track. So there should be congruence, should be alignment between those things. When you figure that out, that is going to help you craft a solution for a free gift, a giveaway, a video, even a short webinar, any kind of a case study, something that's going to be easy for them to access and then take advantage of and run with to get results, whether it's a meeting with you or a PDF that steps them through something that they can do very quickly. And if we go back to the sleep study, maybe there's some super basic things. Maybe the temperature of the baby's room or the lighting should be a certain way, or maybe there should be white noise. Their crib should be positioned a certain way, right? You want to make sure those tips for that specific thing that you're going to talk about on the podcast are available in the free thing that you're offering so that they opt in and then they get an email with a link to that free thing from you. The reason why you want to do that is later on, you can have them on your list, and now you have an opportunity to nurture that relationship, get to know them, and you can send them offers when it feels comfortable. And hopefully you will have people who will become your latest, greatest clients or buyers. Once you've identified your audience, you also want to research the podcast. So this seems super obvious, but the podcast has to be a podcast that has guests. If the person never has any guests, chances are you're not going to be that exception. You can go for it. If you're really in alignment, you think there's a way to partner maybe with that podcast host. But in general, If you want to be a guest, you should look for podcasts that actually have guests. And a lot of us do a mixture of solo episodes like this, and then we'll have a guest on and we mix it up a little, but there are plenty of podcasts out there that completely rely on guests for their content. It's easier for them. They might have to do some research and come up with questions, but it's more dynamic. They're asking questions, getting feedback. It's two people's energy. They don't have to carry the whole show on their own. So those are the ones you want to look for. You want to listen to the host tone and style. Are they listening? Are they engaging and asking curious questions that pull out your expertise, your knowledge, answer frequently asked questions that you would get related to your whatever your topic is? Those are the kinds of things that you want to look for and see how they interact with their guests. In a perfect world, you will also have a podcast one sheet that you're pitching, and on that sheet's a little bit about you, your picture, your background, any big accolades, and then what are your talking points? What are the things that you can, with credibility and confidence, easily off the cuff discuss, questions you can answer that will bring value to an audience? Usually it's between 4 and 5 bullet points, which are your talking points. And we can change those. You can have more than one sheet so that you can tailor it to the podcast that you're pitching. That gives the podcast host some sense of, oh, I see that Carrie talks about sleep issues with babies, or maybe you're a sleep expert and you know why parents are crabby or have a crappy relationship right now and they just had a baby, and you have some tips for them on not just the baby sleep part, but for how they as a couple can get through this tricky phase with the new baby in the house. So you put those things on your one sheet, and then the host, they're going to get a pitch from you that's pretty succinct. So when they go back and they're considering who should be a guest, they're going to look at that one sheet and they'll know, did we have an episode like that in the last 6 months or year? Is this something that did really well with our audience, or was it a dud? You want to have more than one thing that you've noticed that they have covered in the past or never ever covered but should. So you look at you listen to their episodes and you want to listen to their style, how they interact, but also look through podcasts that they've had, assuming there's one a week. If there's 2 a week, look even further back because they have a lot of content, and see, is there anybody else like me who's recently been on this podcast? If there is or has been, it doesn't mean you can't pitch them. It just means you might want to hold off and pitch another podcast and maybe loop back to them and say, I know you had somebody on. If in the future, in the next X number of months, you want to cover this, I have a slightly different spin on this conversation from episode 54 with Rachel, the other sleep expert. I have a different take on it. So you can still pitch them, but just be cognizant of the fact that if they already covered it, they might want to wait a while to go back and cover that topic again. But the other thing to think about is, do they let you fully explain an offer? Now, you don't want to get on a show just to pitch your thing that you're selling. You want to have a real conversation. You want there to be value exchanged. You want to talk about your expertise in a really organic way. And at the end, when they say, okay, this has been great, how can my audience find you? Oh, I'm glad you asked. You can go to, don't do www, just say the name of the website.com and then maybe slash the name of whatever your free thing is. Give them the URL. Maybe you have a special website set up, a domain that forwards to your page where they can see the video, download the PDF. Instead of saying the name of your website.com/whatever, you just pick a whole new domain. Like me, I have how to pitch a podcast. I could have that as a domain so I don't have to spell out where people can go and find the how to pitch a podcast free PDF, where there's a little bit of a pitch sheet and some tips, a little bit like what we're talking about today. And if they let people talk about their offer and mention it, that usually happens toward the end. So if you don't have time to listen to the entire podcast, you can skim through toward that last 5 minutes and see how that part goes. Look in the show notes, see, are the guests, are they linking to their social media? Are they linking to a free giveaway? Those are all clues that you can do that too. And those are really valuable. because they help you get more people to your stuff. And they're linking to your websites. Again, it's building your SEO, your findability in search engines, and it's raising your credibility. The last thing is the vibe, a good fit for you. I mentioned the guy who was jokey and shticky who said, yeah, you can be on my podcast. And I was like, no, this makes no sense for me with either of my two brands. One for mom entrepreneurs, it was too silly. And then obviously for people recovering from emotional abuse, it made no sense at all. And he sometimes embarrassed his guests. So it was like, thanks, but no thanks. You really want to listen and make sure that the person is somebody you'd be comfortable with. Maybe you can handle people who are really jokey. Maybe that's a perfect fit. You have an entertainment blog, or maybe you have your own entertainment podcasting or a YouTube channel, and you're going on like-minded podcasts. Or maybe you sell t-shirts that are based on that. So being on that guy's show for you would be a huge win and a great fit. You just have to feel comfortable. When I say vibe, it's like, what's the energy? Are they calm? Are they hyper? Are they really listening and engaged and respectful? What feels right for you? And also what's going to feel right for your audience too, because you're probably going to share this content, right, with the people on your email list, the people on your social media. And you don't want to feel icky about, oh gosh, I was on this podcast and I embarrassed myself, or I felt really weird or destabilized or whatever. You want to feel like it was a good fit. And sometimes it's good to be on these podcasts that are very different from your normal tone, because it allows your audience to see a different side of you. So it can be a really positive thing, even if it's not the norm for what you do. The main thing is, are you comfortable with it? And is it going to be comfortable for your audience too? These are ideal podcast qualities. I think it's important for the host to listen to you and let you speak without interrupting. Again, unless your brand is slightly sarcastic and a little banter back and forth is part of what you do, then that's great. But most of us want a host who listens respectfully and is engaged. Are they engaged? Do they think on their feet? Do they ask questions and try to draw you out? Some podcasters are really good at asking a question and then just letting the guest go. The guest can talk without any other questions for 10, 15 minutes, because the person who's speaking is such a great expert and what they're saying is so intriguing that no real questions need to be asked. On YouTube podcasts, people will comment if an interviewer is always interrupting and asking a lot of questions when the audience really wants to hear a complete answer. It's okay to interrupt respectfully and wait for a little bit of a space. This is something I'm working on, because I know sometimes it is hard when somebody's saying something and you're so intrigued and you can think of a question. As a host, you need to write it down and then just ask when it's appropriate. So the last thing is, how does it feel? High energy, mellow, curious, tuned in, attentive. Are they talking a lot? Podcast hosts like to be heard, so they talk a lot, more than they really need to. And in an interview situation, that can be a little bit awkward if it's more than you're allowing the guests to speak. Sometimes you can be like, okay, why did they have this guest on? I didn't get to hear what that person was saying. So tailor your podcast that you're choosing to pitch based on all of these qualities, and you can't go wrong. To find the podcasts for your audience, once you know who your audience is, you want to focus in on niches. And I said this in the last episode. If you want to go back, if you haven't heard that, one of the things I said, which is a little bit of a paradox for people, the bigger podcasts, the really popular ones, often don't deliver the kind of results for lead generations, email opt-ins. They don't deliver as well as the smaller to medium-sized podcasts that have a very loyal following. It's very niche. Really like the host. They tune in, they'll stop the podcast, they'll re-listen again after they get out of the car and they want to go wash their dishes or take a walk. Like, they'll pop in their headphones and earbuds and they will listen until the very end. So focus on those smaller ones instead of super big shows. At some point down the road, after you've been on the smaller ones and you feel super comfortable as a guest, definitely get on those shows, and it is going to build your credibility. It's just that they don't tend to be the ones where you get a lot back in terms of building your audience and getting warm leads and that kind of thing. So ideal client shows, look for podcasts that are popular among your clients. You can ask or survey your exact audience through social media, your list, all the things I mentioned before. You can just say, hey, What are your favorite podcasts? What new podcasts are you listening to that you don't want to stop listening? And you might be surprised what comes up, and it might not be the right fit. There might be some ones that are more based on their interests and less about who they are as a person. Still make note of it, because if you start to see a pattern like, wow, all the people in my audience are listening to XYZ podcasts. I've never heard of it before, but I'm going to go check it out because why not? And you might, if it makes sense, you might want to pitch. And again, it might be a true crime podcast where there are no guests. So then that's not really an option. And then the last thing is, ask your email list. I said this already, but just make sure that you use your email list to ask these kind of burning questions, just to get to know people. And maybe you can offer some kind of reward for if you get enough answers. Maybe they get a free one-on-one with you or something else you offer. Maybe it's a t-shirt or swag, or even just a shout out on your podcast. You can say their name at the beginning or end of the show for helping you. And I think that's another way to create that connection to your audience. And that is it. So the really tippity top here, know your audience, define them, understand them, identify some solutions for them, research the potential podcast. That means listening to the host, making sure they have guests, making sure they're linking to the guest in their show notes. Check out their social media. Are they promoting the guests? Are they promoting the episode? That's something I've done very early on. Recently, I've done much less of, and I don't have any guests right now, but I need to do more of that. And I really do enjoy it. Actually, I really love promoting and shining the spotlight on my guests. So the ideal ones, they would put you in their show notes. They would also share the episode from some of their social media. They would share the episode from their website, assuming they have a podcast website or a website that has the podcast listed. They would share it to their list. That's what I would look for, ideally. And then find some podcasts that your audience listens to. You can do that by polls. You can do that in Facebook groups too, even in a Facebook group that you're not running, but you're a member in. If you're allowed to ask questions and have a conversation going around podcasts, use the search engine in that group where your ideal clients are hanging out. Just search podcasts, see if anybody had a conversation about podcasts, and then you can use those to target the podcasts that you want to pitch. So these are my tips. And the next episode, we will talk about how to find those podcasts, how to find the name of the person to pitch. So that's coming up in the next episode. But for now, if you want to grab the quick PDF download, how to pitch a podcast with tips and tricks on how to get the attention of us podcast hosts, the best way to present yourself quickly to get consideration to be on a podcast, go to audaciousmamas.com/how to pitch pods. audaciousmamas.com/how to pitch pods. I hope you get out there. I hope you get on some shows, and I would love to hear from you. Just shoot me a message on my social media. You can find me at Audacious Mamas on Instagram. You can also go to my YouTube. It's Stephanie Roberts on YouTube, or Steph Roberts, and put some comments there and let me know how it goes. I'm looking forward to connecting with you and hearing more. Best of luck.